I'm Dan Noel and welcome to the rabbit hole.
Good evening, Tony Kellum here for Infowars.com. I'm here with a very distinguished 9/11 expert, Dan Noel. Dan, welcome to Infowars.com.
Thank you, Tony. My pleasure. I'm from Belgium, where I spent the first 25 years of my life. I studied there. I got a master in electromechanical engineering at the age of 21, summa cum laude. And I spent the second half of my life in the United States. I have behind me a couple of decades working as an engineer. And for the last few years I have been very active on 9/11. One of the factors that most woke me up on 9/11 was the discovery of the excellent website of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, where I found that a few hundreds of my colleagues were affirming the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers and Building 7. And I have been doing some original work on 9/11 in the very important area of the censorship, which unfortunately is not well understood by many 9/11 truth seekers.
Why is it so difficult to discuss 9/11? Why is this material so unacceptable in polite and mainstream society?
There are many elements of answer to this question. Within the context of the censorship, I would observe that respectable leaders never mention 9/11 truth, except for occasionally ridiculing and demonizing people who dare to dissent from the official narrative. So through some trickle-down mechanism, many people simply refuse to discuss the possibility that the official 9/11 narrative could not be an absolute truth.
Tell us a little bit about how your view of this particular false flag sits in the history of false flags.
This is an excellent question. The false flag of 9/11 is unique among the many false flags which have evidently taken place. In 9/11, the conspirators gave us the video of the false flag. They made sure that the cameras were there to capture the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers destruction starts suddenly with no warning. It starts with a complete disintegration of the top of the tower and then progresses straight down at a very high speed from the level of the earlier terror attacks down to ground level. And within 10 to 15 seconds, the tower has been disintegrated. Its steel frame has been cut into thousands of pieces, mostly linear, about 10 meters long, ready to be picked up by cranes and put on trucks to be shipped away, and the rest of the contents of the tower have been reduced to very small pieces and even small powder. With this evidence, the 9/11 conspirators frightened us, the gullible people of the United States, but they also gave us important clues so that you don't have to be an engineer to understand that the Twin Towers were destroyed intentionally by a team of experts. And that's not even mentioning Building 7. This leads us to the question that the chief engineers of the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers, who were certainly experts in their field, must have known that we, the people, would get an awareness of what they had done. And it's not just ordinary people we are talking about. The New York firemen would also understand that, and so would FBI agents. Which means that the chief engineers of the Twin Towers controlled demolition exposed themselves to very severe criminal prosecutions.
And they felt safe in this somehow. They felt protected.
Well, it stands to reason that if they accepted the job, they somehow had assurances that no matter how obvious the controlled demolitions of the Twin Towers and Building 7, they would get away with it. There would be no legal trouble awaiting them. This begs the question that somehow the 9/11 master conspirators were able of guaranteeing those engineers and their collaborators immunity from criminal prosecution.
And the guarantee would have to come from the highest level, right, in that case?
Oh, definitely. And we know, after the fact, that these 9/11 agents indeed did get immunity. The US executive branch put together an elaborate theater, mostly involving the military and also other agencies, that gave the 9/11 terrorists cover and protection. The US executive branch put together the story of 19 Islamic fanatics under the influence of Osama bin Laden. They put them into airplanes and they somehow got those airplanes into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. This was a very elaborate activity that had to involve hundreds of high-ranking federal public servants. Those public servants, like the engineers of the Twin Towers demolition, were quite capable of understanding that they were committing an act of treason against the United States. They were doing the exact opposite of their job description. They were helping terrorists instead of trying to contain and arrest them. And as such, they also exposed themselves to a retirement in high security prison, which leads us to the conclusion that they probably got guarantees that they also would be immune from prosecution. This leads us to the theory of the 9/11 censorship. The protection that these high-ranking federal employees got was that of the numerous entities and leaders opposed to the neoconservatives, virtually nobody has blown the 9/11 whistle. The main target of the 9/11 censorship are the people who try to make the public aware of the horror of 9/11.
Hold on a second, explain that again. So you're saying the censorship nowadays or today has less to do with covering up the false flag and it has more to do with censoring the truth seekers?
Absolutely. The false flag is water under the bridge. The Twin Towers were demolished. The hundreds or the thousands of civilians were killed. The cover-up is water under the bridge. The US government put up the airplane ballet around the Twin Towers, the Pentagon and Shanksville. That's done, but the censorship is still going on. Somehow, whoever is in charge of the 9/11 censorship is committed to your failure as you try to spread the knowledge of what happened on 9/11. As such, it is very important for 9/11 truth seekers to become aware of the existence of 9/11 censorship and to tailor their outreach to its existence. The solution of 9/11 is simple.
In our next interview, Dan will take us deeper down the rabbit hole and we will see even more details of the censorship and the massive matrix, which Dan calls the Global Platonic Theater. Stay tuned.